Winnie the Pooh, a classic children's story, just last year entered what is called the public domain. So when people write books, write music, make movies like this one, there's something called a copyright. And the copyright says that the person who created the book, movie, story, has the right to say what gets done with it for a period of time. And the period of time has changed over the years. It used to be 30 years. Now it's 100, or the life of the author plus 70 years. So Winnie the Pooh is hit the 100-year mark. Or maybe it's 120. Anyway, Winnie the Pooh became so old that it now fell into the public domain. And that means that anyone can tell the story, anyone can do whatever they want with the story. If I wanted to print out copies of this and sell the copies of this, I could. Anyone can print out copies of this and sell it because it's so old. And the reason why it's allowed is that the limitations on the rights of it. It's a long time ago they decided, if someone makes something new and novel, they should be able to benefit from it. Because hundreds of years before that, you'd have people write music, like Mozart would write this music, and then everybody else would make money selling copies of Mozart's music. And Bach. People made money selling copies of Bach's music and Beethoven's music. And eventually the governments of the world, this is kind of like all over the planet, decide, hey, they should be the only ones to be able to do this. So A.A. Milne, when he wrote the book, had the exclusive right to sell it and do whatever he wanted with it. He was the only one who was allowed to make copies of it. And then the family sold the rights to Disney, and Disney made a whole bunch of movies out of it. And because the movies are derived, the movies have their own copyright. And so in another 60 or 70 years, you'll have Disney's Winnie the Pooh available free of copyright. But this is the original story, which is now, as I said, available free of copyright. And Winnie the Pooh is kind of close to my heart. When I was 4 or 5 years old in kindergarten, the kindergarten class put on Winnie the Pooh. And so we all had different roles, and I was sort of part of the chorus. I didn't have my own speaking part. I wanted to be Christopher Robin, but I didn't get to be Christopher Robin. I ended up being Eeyore. And perhaps that's influenced my path down the road. Eeyore doesn't show up in this book, so this is about the only mention of Eeyore, though another Winnie the Pooh book came into public domain this year, 2023. So as of yesterday, another Winnie the Pooh book is available. So I may do that one back to back with this one. We'll see. Anyway, so this is Winnie the Pooh. And so here you have Pooh. Starts out with Pooh coming down the stairs. Bump, 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 bump. And that's because Christopher Robin is dragging along his stuffed bear by the foot. So he's holding onto the foot, and he's swinging his arm. And because he's holding onto the foot, and the head is at the opposite end of the foot, the head goes bump, bump, bump down the stairs as he walks. Now, if he were to hold it like this up against his chest, or if he were to hold it by the body, then the head wouldn't bump and the body wouldn't bump. But he holds it by the foot. And because he holds it by the foot, the ankle, the head goes bump, bump, bump down the stairs. So that's kind of sad for Winnie the Pooh. But, at this point, Christopher Robin is young. And also, one of the things that's kind of cool about this is you hear Winnie the Pooh's official name. His name is Edward Bear. But he's called Winnie the Pooh. And that's not really explained. And I think it's absolutely hilarious. He's Winnie-ther-Pooh, And don't you know what "there" means? And the narrator says, "Ah, yes, I do now." And then says, "I hope you do too, because it's all the explanation you're ever going to get." So Winnie the Pooh is Edward Bear, but he's called Winnie the Pooh, and Winnie is a girl's name, but we don't know what it means in relation to Pooh and Thur and all of that. So maybe it's a title, maybe it's something else. It's all up to interpretation. So this is the first chapter. The rain cloud. That's one of the. This is one of the more memorable Winnie the Pooh stories, where he's hanging from a balloon. Now, there aren't many balloons that will hold up a stuffed animal. Stuffed animal usually weighs a couple of pounds. General rule of thumb is a party balloon gives you about an ounce of lift, so you would need 20 or 30 balloons to lift up a little stuffed bear, possibly even more. So, there's no way that Christopher Robin would be able to float a bear like that off of a balloon. Plus, when you blow up the balloon with just air, you go, and the balloon, it doesn't actually generate any lift because you need helium or hydrogen inside of the balloon to generate the lift. So just blowing up the balloon big doesn't really help. Also, most party balloons, if you pop a hole in it, it doesn't deflate slowly, it just bursts because the latex rips. Now, there's a really cool magic trick that I learned once, where you have the balloon and you go pop and you stick a needle into it, and you stick a needle in elsewhere, and you stick a needle in elsewhere, and the balloon doesn't pop. And then you just pop the balloon. And you can say, "Oh, magic needle." And there's various different stories you stick along with it. Sometimes they use this long knitting needle for more dramatic things. But the trick is you put a little piece of Scotch tape, sellotape, over the spot where you're going to stick it in. And what that does is it keeps the balloon from ripping. So you go in and you pierce the tape, and the latex is under all of this tension, so it just wants to tear. But because the cellophane tape is there, Scotch tape is there, it keeps the balloon from tearing. It supports the latex. And if you do it very small pieces and you're careful about it, it doesn't really show up, especially if you use like a satin finish. A shiny finish glossy finish might reflect, but if you use a satin finish, it doesn't really show up against the satiny balloon. And so you stick the things in it. And the problem is that there's these little holes where the pin goes through or the needle goes through. And these little holes will eventually deflate the balloon and give away the gag. Because once the balloon starts deflating, the tape doesn't shrink up like the latex does. And so you stick it through and, nothing happens. Another way to do this is you stick it through near the knot at the base of the balloon. Because the knot at the base of the balloon, the rubber is thicker. So because the rubber is thicker, you just stick it through there and it won't have the tendency to tear that it will in the main body of the balloon, because it's not stretched as much. And so here you have Pooh done up all in mud. And it's like, pay no attention to me. I'm just a little black rain cloud. And I don't know. This is one of those things that it's like, it kind of sticks with me. It's like, tut tut, looks like rain. And this is something that nobody should believe. And Pooh's like, I'm just a rain cloud. Rain clouds always sing. And so it's an amusing story. It brings me joy, and I guess that's the important thing.